Hello everyone, this is Brad Wood again, and today I'm going to be giving you another screencast in our What's New in CommandBox 5 series. So this one we're talking about cloning Git repos over HTTPS with username and password or personal access tokens. So previously, anyone could clone a public Git repo, but if you wanted to clone a private Git repo, you needed to use SSH keys. Those work okay, but they can be a bit picky. You need to maintain your keys in your user's home directory, and sometimes the Java JGit library that we use for cloning repos can be a little picky about what kind of keys it wants to accept. So this gives us a bit more flexibility. Now, a little note on username and password. It is worth noting that GitHub specifically has announced they've deprecated using your account's username and password to interact with their API, and I assume clone repos. That'll actually be removed this year, I think around November 2020. So don't get used to using the username and password on your account, but you can still use personal access tokens, and those work all the same. The main difference being you don't need to use your actual GitHub account username and password. You can create a one-off access token that you can delete later on. So the documentation for this is on commandbox.wordlessbooks.com. Go to package management and then code endpoints and Git. And if you scroll a little ways down the page, this is all covered in the password authentication section. So let me just go through and show you an example. It's not hard to do, but you just have to make sure you get it all in the right format. I did notice in my testing that GitHub and GitLab like the format to be slightly different. If you use a Git client other than one of those, you may need to experiment to see what they like. Here I have an example of just basically an empty private GitHub repository that I've created. There's just a README file and some other things in there. So in order to be able to clone this using a personal access token, you're going to want to go to your GitHub settings. So you click on the little image here, and you click on settings, and you scroll down, and you have to click on developer settings. They've pushed this deep down in here, and then you have your personal access tokens. So once you create a token, you only get to view it right then, and it's up to you to copy and paste it out. These tokens I've created previously, I have no way to go back in and see what they are, right? All I can do is delete and recreate them. So we're going to create a new token for this. I'm going to call it test, and I'm going to check the repo box. So I'm going to give it full control of my private repositories. And then I go ahead and I generate the token. All right, so this is my one and only chance to ever use this token. Don't even try to use it. I'm deleting it as soon as I finished with the screencast. So I'm going to go ahead and plunk this into VS Code for a quick second and come back. So now let's go to my repo, and I'm going to click clone or download. We want to clone with HTTPS, right? This is not an SSH feature. It's HTTPS. I'm going to grab the clone URL for this repo. So this is how we build it. If you go look in the docs, we can see that for GitHub, it wants you to have your username, colon, and then your key, your personal access token, or you can just use your personal access token all by itself and just drop the username because they're unique. So we're going to take our URL, we add git plus to the front of it. This is what tells CommandBox that this URL points to a Git repo. And then we take our personal access token and we slam it right here before our URL and add an @ sign. So we have git plus https:// my temporary personal access token, which I'll be revoking here in a few minutes, and then the rest of my URL, my Git user and my test private package. So now to use this, we can go to CommandBox and just paste it in, install, and use that URL, and it authenticates with my personal access token, and it installs this empty repository as a package. This works the exact same in your box.json. You would just have in your dependencies struct, you would have the name of the package being installed as the key, and the value would literally just be this string. So I'm just using it here with the install command just to show you how it works, but it's no different in your box.json. Okay, so that's a quick example of doing it with GitHub. I'll show you a quick example of GitLab, just since they do it slightly differently. Here I have a private GitLab repo, which is the source code for the ForgeBox site, just because it's the first thing I pulled up. So your personal access tokens in GitLab, this is a self-hosted version that Ortus uses. You go to your little icon again in settings, and then we go to access tokens, and here we can create a personal access token for your GitLab. So I'll call this one test as well because I'm rather unoriginal. I will tell it can read the repository, and I'll generate the access token. So again, I only have this one chance to copy it to my clipboard. Once I navigate away from this page, this token is gone for good. I mean, it's there, but you can't view it as a security measure. So let's throw that guy into VS Code. So now I'm going to go to the repo, and I'm going to get the HTTPS clone URL. There we go. So we do the same thing. It's git plus HTTPS. So CommandBox install knows us to git repo. And our format's slightly differently for GitLab. With GitLab, it needs to have a username from my testing, but it doesn't matter what it is. So something : and then your personal access token. So that's what we'll do here. HTTPS : / I'll just put Brad : and then we'll grab my personal access token, which I've generated for this example, and which has a, oops, got some line breaks in there screwing with me. Brad : there we go, and then the @. All right, so this is my clone URL using my temporary personal access token for GitLab. Let's cross our fingers, and we should be able to install that directly. There we go. So it's authenticated to GitLab using the personal access token. Now, if I revoke this token, that will instantly stop working. It's not associated with my actual username and password at all with GitLab. It's just a temporary token. You can have as many of these tokens as you like, and they're pretty easy to work with. They're honestly a little bit easier than SSH keys, I think. Okay, there's a lot of dependencies in this ForgeBox repo. We don't necessarily care about them, so we'll just let those crank through. There is a note in here about environment variables. Many of you are probably thinking, well, I don't want to put my personal access token inside my box.json. And you're right, you don't. That, in theory, that's different for every one of your developers. It's not something you want to commit to the repo. So what you can do, of course, is you can use our environment variable placeholders in your box.json. So instead of just pasting the actual access token in your box.json, you would have your git plus HTTPS URL, and then you would just put the $, curly brace, and then the name of an environment variable. And then your developers would probably provide that in their .env file with the project. There's lots of ways you could do it, but that would be one of them. So just to show what that looks like, there we go. I finished installing the ForgeBox. You can see ForgeBox has all kinds of good stuff, since of course it's an entire website. So let me go back to my my GitHub just to show you what that would look like. There we go. So this was that GitHub URL. So imagine I'm doing this in my box.json, right? We would copy out our personal access token, and then we would replace in here the environment variable name of your choosing, and then we would just need to make sure this was set as an environment variable. So let's see here. Oops, I don't know what I typed, but it wasn't. Oh, I typed CLS and I already had stuff on the line. All right, do I have a .env file in this directory? No, I don't. So just to show you what it looked like, I'm going to create, if I can figure out how to type, a .env file. And I will say I want a token to be that. That's my GitHub personal access token. All right, so we can test that. We can say environment show token, and there's our token. So CommandBox is picking it up. I am using the CommandBox.env module for that to work, right? That's not a core functionality. So now I can come and I can clone this sort of clean URL. I can say install this package, and it will still pick up that token. For what it's worth, you can see that the token does appear in the output. So if you're doing this as part of a as part of a Travis build or something that's public, you may want to do some cleaning on the output to make sure that those environment variables aren't shown to people who may be able to view the output of that. Okay, so that's a quick example of doing that for GitHub and GitLab. And then while I'm in here, I will delete the token for GitHub, and I will revoke my test token for GitLab. So there you go. So those tokens are now dead in the water. They don't do anything. One more quick note. There is also support that was added, which is a netrc file. I honestly had never even heard of this. I guess it's a standard that's been around for a while, and the JGit library supported it, so you can use it. All you have to do to use this is you create a file called .netrc or underscore netrc in your user home directory. So whatever user CommandBox is running as, and just as a little reminder, you can use the info command and you can see the user that CommandBox is running as. So I'm under the Brad user on my computer. So inside of my home directory for Brad, I can create a file called .netrc, and inside of it you have machine space and then the host name you want to associate the login with, and then login space, name of the username, password space, name of the password, or the personal access token in this case. So if you create this file with this name in this directory with this text inside of it, anytime you clone a repo, CommandBox will automatically, and I say CommandBox, it's really the JGet library doing this. It'll find that file, it'll find the matching username and password based on the domain you're hitting, so you could have multiple login sections, and it'll pull them in and it'll use them automatically. So that's another way to do it. I don't necessarily care for managing stuff in my home directory. This kind of puts me back in the SSH key land. I like to have it as wrapped up as possible in my box.json, but for what it's worth, it's out there. It seems to work in my testing, and it's all done purely by convention. And again, this does need to be HTTPS. I purposefully don't support it over HTTP because it's just not smart to be sending stuff like that over the internet without some kind of encryption wrapped into it. So hopefully that comes in handy for some of you guys who want to use your personal Git repos, but the SSH keys are a bit of a pain, and you want to just be able to use your personal access tokens. Every developer in your project can have their own tokens. They stick in their environment file, and it just works. Okay, guys, have a good one, and I'll see you in our next screencast.